I want to be clear about something before I tell you this. I am not a superstitious person. I was a 26-year-old radiology technician working night shifts at Metro General, a public hospital in a city I will not name, during a summer that I have spent every year since trying to forget. I believe in science. I believe in the measurable world. And I am telling you anyway, because I need someone to know what I saw in room 412, and because the official report I filed, the one that used the words sleep deprivation and stress-induced perception, was never, not once, the truth. I pick up the extra night rotation as a favor to my supervisor, Marco, whose wife had just delivered twins. The fourth floor was the general recovery ward. Post-op patients, stable cases, nothing acute. Nights were supposed to be quiet. You did your rounds, you checked IV lines, you updated the portable imaging logs, and you sat at the nurse's station drinking coffee that tasted like it had been brewed sometime during the previous administration. The fourth floor had a particular smell. All hospital smells of antiseptic and something faintly sweet. A smell that I have since learned your brain associates, on a neurological level, with danger. But the fourth floor had a secondary layer underneath that, something older, damp, almost like a room that had been closed for a long time and was only now letting in air. I mentioned it to one of the floor nurses, a veteran named Dolores, who had worked there for 19 years. The fourth floor always smells like that, she said, without looking up from her chart. You stop noticing after a while, she posted. Most people do. I didn't ask what she meant by most people. Room 412 was at the end of the east corridor. There were 12 rooms on the floor, 6 on each side, and 412 was the last door on the right before you hit the fire exit. It had been occupied the first week, but an elderly man recovering from a hip replacement, a Mr. Villian Weather, 74, pleasant, asked me every night what the weather was like outside. Then he was discharged. The room sat empty again for 2 days. On the third night, a new patient was admitted. I only know what was written on the door chart. Female, 34. Admitted for post-surgical monitoring, following a procedure I won't detail here, because it is not relevant and because her privacy even now matters to me. What is relevant is that, by the second night of her stay, she began asking the staff not to enter her room past midnight. It wasn't difficult, wasn't confused or combative the way some post-op patients can be. Dolores told me the woman was lucid, calm, and perfectly polite about it. She would press the call button at 11:50 and ask someone to do her vitals early, before the hour turned. And then she would say every single night, "Please don't come back in until morning. Don't open the door, don't knock, just please." The staff found it eccentric, a quack. They accommodated her because she wasn't violating any protocol, and because there was nothing in her chart that required monitoring past that point. It became routine. You did her 11:45 check, you smiled, you left. I thought nothing of it until the fourth night, when I was the one who did her pre-midnight check, and as I turned to leave she grabbed my wrist. "Don't look at the window," she said. Her voice was completely level. "Well, you're in the corridor later? Don't look at the window of this room." I told her I wouldn't. I thought it was medication. I thought it was the specific kind of anxious, half-lucid state that descends on patient in the small hours. When the building gets quiet and the door is still recovering from the trauma of being cut open. I have seen stranger things. I smiled again and I left. 2:17 a.m. I looked at the window. I want to explain how it happened because it was not dramatic. I was walking back from the supply room near the fire exit, carrying a box of IV saline bags that needed to go to the nurse's station. I was so tired. It was my 5th consecutive night shift. The door was lit by the overhead fluorescents, which on the 4th floor had a particular quality, slightly to yellow, slightly to still, the kind of light that makes shadow look like they have weight. Room 412 is at the end of the hall. The window and the door is stand. Small, rectangular panel of reinforced glass set at eye level, about the size of a sheet of paper, wired inside, with a fine metal grid they put in institutional glass to prevent shattering. You passed it every time you walked the corridor. I had passed it 100 times already that week. What made me look, I cannot tell you. There was no sound, no movement in my peripheral vision, no rational reason whatsoever. But I turned my head as I walked past, the way you turn your head when you feel eyes on you, and I looked through the wide glass into room 412. The room was dark. The patient bed was on the far wall, and I could see the shape of her under the blanket, still sleeping, turned toward the wall. The monitoring equipment threw its faintly green glow across the ceiling. Everything was exactly as it should have been, except for the figure standing at the foot of the bed. I stopped walking. The saline bags shifted in my arms. I stood there in the corridor and I stared, because my brain was doing what brains do. Running rapid inventory, searching for rational explanation. A staff member. The family visitor who had somehow gotten past the visiting hours? Or maybe a second patient I had not been told about. It was none of these things. It was standing at the foot of the bed with its back to the door. It was roughly the shape of a person, 2 legs, a torso, a head. But the proportions were wrong in a way that I cannot articulate even now. The way a reflection in water is almost right, but carries in it some quality of distortion that your eyes catches before your mind does. It was wearing what happened to be a hospital gown. It was not moving. I stood there for, I counted later because I needed to quantify it. I needed it to have a number, approximately 4 seconds. 4 seconds of complete stillness. Me in the corridor. It in the room. This patient sleeping between us. And then it turned its head. Not its body. Just its head. Slowly. The way a person turns when they know they are being watched and they are not afraid of it. Another 4 seconds before I looked away, before I turned my eyes from the window and I walked. Did not run. I walked. Because I was professional in a hospital and I was not going to run. I saw its face. It did not have a face. Where the face should have been, there was simply more head. Smooth, uninterrupted, the way a mannequin looks before the features are painted on, and yet I had the absolute bone-cold certainty that it was looking directly at me.
The morning after I told Dolores, I sat at the nurse's station at 4 in the morning and I told her everything, keeping my voice low and even, the way you do when you are trying very hard not to sound like you are losing your mind. She listened without interrupting. She did not look surprised. She did not look skeptical. She looked, if anything, tired. Tired in a particular way of someone who had just heard something before and was hoping not to hear it again. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How long have you been on the 4th floor?" 2 weeks, I told her. She nodded slowly. "The last second did a long rotation up here," she said. "He requested a transfer after 3 weeks. Before him, there was a nurse, very experienced woman, 12 years, who stopped coming into work one day, never came back. Just stopped. I heard she moved to the province. I asked her what she had seen. "I haven't seen anything," Dolores said. "In 19 years, I have not once looked at the window of room 412 past midnight." She picked up a pen and returned to her chart. "I learned that rule in my first month. Nobody told me. I just learned it." The next evening, just before her 11:45 check, I asked the patient in room 412 a question. I asked her how long it had been visiting. She looked at me for a long time. The room was still bright, the overhead light on, the blinds open to the evening sky, the television murmuring in the corner. She looked completely healthy. She looked like a person who was going to be discharged in 2 days and go home to a normal life. "It was there before I was admitted," she said finally. "I think it lives in this room. I don't think it's dangerous. I think it just watches." She smoothed the blanket over her lap. "My mother was in this room 11 years ago. Hip surgery, same as Mr. Villeneuve. She told me the same thing," she said. "Don't let them put you in 412. If they put you in 412, don't let anyone look through that window at night." I asked her why not. If it was just watching, why did it matter if someone looked? She was quiet for a moment. Outside, a chart rattled past in the corridor. A PA system chimed somewhere far below us. "Because," she said, "I think looking back is how it learned your face." I completed that night shift. I completed the rest of the rotation. I walked that corridor every night of another 3 weeks. Eyes straight ahead when I passed 412 after midnight, and I did not see anything unusual again. The patient was discharged. The room was cleaned, turned over, filled with someone else. I requested a transfer to the 2nd floor at the end of the month, citing schedule conflicts, and Marco approved it without asking questions. I have worked in hospitals for 9 years now. I have seen death up close. I have seen the way the body fails, the way the machine measures the fading of a person in peaks and valleys on a screen, the way grief looks on a face in a hospital corridor at 3 in the morning. None of it disturbs me the way the room disturbs me. Not because of what I saw, but because of what I thought about every single day for 6 years, every morning when I wake up, whether it looked at me long enough to finish, whether in the 4 seconds before I turned away, looking back through institutional glass in a yellow-lit corridor in a hospital that smelled of old rooms and antiseptics. It had enough time to learn the shape of my face, whether somewhere in a room I no longer work for, in a building I no longer enter, something is standing in the dark, perfectly still, patiently remembering me.